Part 8. The Forest's Consensus Protocol. How life coordinates without a king. How ecosystems coordinate without central control, and what that teaches us about cooperation, trust, and scalable resilience. This completes the season arc beautifully. Part 1. The Network. Part 2. The Hijack. Part 3. The Recovery Code. Part 4. The Signal Layer. Part 5. The Memory System. Part 6. The Time Machine. Part 7. The Decision Engine. Part 8. The Consensus Protocol. Season Finale. This is the episode where your series evolves from hidden nature science into a true model for civilization design. Part 8. The Forest's Consensus Protocol. How life coordinates without a king. What if the most powerful coordination system on Earth has no headquarters, no president, no server room, no command tower, no single brain giving orders, and yet it adapts, it allocates, it recovers, it scales, it survives? A forest. This is Part 8, the Forest's Consensus Protocol, the season finale of Forest's Dark Web. And after everything we've uncovered the hidden network, the signals, the memory, the timing, the decisions, we arrive at the final question. How does a living system coordinate millions of interactions without central control and still remain coherent? Because from the outside, a forest can look like chaos. Different species, different ages, different strategies, competition everywhere, disturbance everywhere, death, regrowth, decay, emergence all at once, no obvious leader. And yet, the system does not dissolve. It organizes. Not perfectly, not permanently, not peacefully at every scale, but functionally. That is the miracle, and the science behind it may be one of the most important lessons for the future of human systems. Let's start with a dangerous misconception. When people hear coordination, they often imagine command, a center, a controller, a planner, a top-down intelligence. Forests work differently. They coordinate through distributed interactions, local signals, local responses, local exchanges, local constraints. A root responds to moisture gradients. A leaf adjusts to light and heat. A fungus responds to carbon availability. A microbe responds to chemistry. A seedling responds to shade. An insect responds to plant volatiles. A predator responds to prey distribution. No one actor sees the whole system, and yet system-level patterns emerge. Nutrient cycling, succession pathways, patch dynamics, recovery, mosaics, defense responses, regeneration windows. This is the first law of the forest's consensus protocol. Global order can emerge from local rules. That idea is bigger than ecology. It is the foundation of scalable resilience. But this is not a romantic story of universal harmony. A forest is not everyone cooperating all the time. It is a system where competition and cooperation coexist. Trees compete for light. Roots compete for water. Plants compete for space. Microbes compete for substrates. Insects exploit plants. Pathogens spread when they can. And, still, coordination happens. Why? Because ecosystems are shaped not only by competition, but by interdependence. No tree builds soil alone. No plant controls pollinators alone. No species stabilizes the entire nutrient cycle alone. No individual organism can independently create the climate moderation, habitat structure, and biochemical feedbacks that the whole system produces together. That means the forest's consensus is not agreement. It is functional alignment under constraint. A very different concept. Not everyone wants the same thing, but enough interactions become compatible enough, often enough, for the system to persist. That is a much more realistic model for nature and for us. So how does this protocol actually work? Through feedback loops. The forest is full of them. More shade changes understory growth. Understory growth changes moisture and soil conditions. Soil conditions change microbial activity. Microbial activity changes nutrient availability. Nutrient availability changes plant performance. Plant performance changes litter input. Litter input changes decomposition. Decomposition changes the next cycle, that is, coordination without command. Not because the system is centrally directed, but because outputs become inputs. The forest governs itself through feedback. Some loops stabilize, some amplify, some buffer shocks, some create thresholds and rapid transitions. That last part matters. Because decentralized systems can be resilient, but they can also become unstable if feedbacks are damaged, delayed, or ignored. This is another reason forests matter as a model. They don't teach us that decentralization is automatically good. They teach us that decentralization only works when feedback remains alive. Now add trust, but in ecological terms. Not trust as emotion, trust as predictable interaction. A pollinator visits flowers because rewards are often available. A mycorrhizal association persists because exchange can be beneficial under the right conditions. Seeds disperse through recurring pathways. Predators hunt where prey reliably appears. Dormancy and emergence synchronize with recurring cues. The system builds coordination through repeated patterns that are reliable enough to act upon. That is, ecological trust. And when reliability breaks through climate disruption, habitat fragmentation, pollution, invasive pressure, or over-extraction, coordination weakens. Signals become noisy. Timing mismatches increase. Partners decouple. Feedback loops destabilize. Recovery slows. Collapse risk rises. In other words, trust in a living system is not a moral idea first. It is an operational property. Can one part of the system depend on another part often enough to organize around it? That question applies to forests and to every human system we care about. Think about human networks. In cybersecurity, we build centralized defenses and then wonder why a single failure cascades. The forest asks, where are your local detection loops? Where are your segmented responses? Where are your redundant paths? Where is your consensus under disruption? In supply chains, we optimize for efficiency and then discover hidden dependencies only during crisis. The forest asks, what interactions are truly reliable? What happens when one node disappears? Can the system reroute locally without waiting for top-down rescue? In organizations, we confuse hierarchy with coordination. The forest asks, do teams have feedback loops? Do they share signals early? Can they make local decisions inside clear constraints? Do they know the non-negotiables and the flex zones? In cities, we centralize critical services and call it control. The forest asks, what happens when the center goes dark? That may be the defining test of resilience in the 21st century. Not whether a system has a center, but whether it can stay coherent when the center is overloaded, delayed, or absent. Forests pass this test every day, not because they are simple, but because they are modular, distributed, and feedback-rich. Now we arrive at the hardest and most powerful lesson of the entire season. The forest does not scale by making everything identical. It scales by coordinating difference. Different species, different roles, different tempos, different tolerances, different strategies, different responses to the same stress. Human systems often try to scale through standardization alone. Forests scale through a balance of local autonomy, shared constraints, recurring signals, feedback loops, redundancy, diversity of function. That is the consensus protocol. Not everyone agrees, but the system remains coherent enough for life to continue. Read that again because it may be one of the most useful design principles on Earth. Coherence without uniformity. That is how forests survive complexity. And it may be how we do too. But there is one more piece. Consensus is not free. It requires cost. Energy cost, time cost, signal cost, redundancy cost, tolerance cost. A forest spends energy maintaining relationships, cycling nutrients, rebuilding soil, and supporting interactions that do not always maximize short-term growth. That inefficiency is exactly what gives it resilience. And this is where many human systems fail. We cut the very things that create coordination: buffers, maintenance, local capacity, trust building, redundancy, cross-training, ecological margins. Then we act surprised when the system becomes brittle. The forest would call this a predictable outcome. If you remove the cost of coordination, you remove the conditions for coordinated survival. That may be the final warning of this series. Efficiency can be magnificent, but when it destroys the protocol, it becomes fragility in disguise. So what should we learn from the forest's consensus protocol? Build systems that coordinate without depending on a single point of control. Design local decision rights within shared rules. Protect feedback loops. Reward early signal sharing. Preserve redundancy. Invest in trust as reliability. Keep modular backups. Maintain diversity of function. Train for coherence under disruption, not just performance under normal conditions. And, above all, do not mistake centralized visibility for real coordination, because a dashboard can show everything and still save nothing if the system cannot adapt locally. The forest teaches a deeper standard. A resilient system is one that can stay in conversation with itself while the world is changing. Now step back and look at what this season has revealed. The forest is not just a collection of trees, it is a living network, a target, a recovery system, a signal layer, a memory archive, a timing engine, a decision economy, and now a consensus protocol. No king, no master switch, no final controller, just life, coordinating through relationships. Messy, costly, imperfect, and astonishingly effective. That is not primitive intelligence, that is advanced resilience. And if we are wise enough to learn from it, we may stop building systems that collapse when control fails and start building systems that remain coherent under stress. If Part 3 was the recovery code, Part 4 the signal layer, Part 5 the memory system, Part 6 the time machine, and Part 7 the decision engine, then Part 8 is the final layer, the consensus protocol, the hidden grammar of coordination, the trust architecture beneath resilience. The reason complexity does not always collapse into chaos, and once you see it, you start seeing the same question everywhere. How does this system stay coherent when no one is fully in control? In forests? In cities? In markets? In teams? In institutions? In families? In civilization itself? The strongest systems are not the ones with the loudest center, they are the ones with the deepest relationships. If this changed how you see forests, cooperation, and resilience, like this video and subscribe to Hidden Nature Science TV and Kewash TV, because the next lesson from the living world may not be about survival at all, but about how to build a future that can coordinate at scale.